In the frozen streets of 19th-century London, a boy walks barefoot through the snow. He is not lost, he is owned. Every step he takes is for a master who would rather see him bleed than breathe. His name is Samuel, and for 6 years, chains have been his only home. But tonight, in a city built on cruelty, a spark will rise from the darkness, and the price of freedom will be paid in blood. The smell of salt and rotting wood clung to Samuel's skin long after the ship had scraped against the London dock. He had been on water for weeks, months maybe. Time had blurred into a chain of dark, airless days below deck, where the only light came through cracks in the wood, and the only sound was the coughs of others who didn't survive the crossing. When they did not move in the morning, the crew didn't bury them. They threw them into the sea. Samuel was 12 now, but he had stopped counting birthdays when the men came to his village 6 years ago. He still remembered the blur of that day, his mother's voice screaming his name, the rush of feet pounding dry earth, the smell of smoke as homes were set alight. Then came the ropes, the hot iron shackles, and the long march to the coast. He never saw her again. London was colder than anything Samuel had imagined. The sky was a constant gray ceiling, low and heavy with smoke from countless chimneys. His bare feet met streets slick with mud, horse manure, and coal dust. The merchant who owned him, Harold Whitcomb, didn't give him shoes, only barked at him to keep up as they made their way from the docks. The man's coat was fine wool, lined with fur. Samuel's shirt was thin linen, stiff with salt. When they reached Whitcomb's house, Samuel saw stone walls taller than any tree he remembered, iron gates sharp like teeth, and windows that reflected the gray sky back at him. Inside, it smelled of polished wood and roasted meat. He was not invited to taste it. Instead, Whitcomb led him down to a cellar. The door creaked open to a low, damp space, the air heavy with the scent of mildew. A single cot stood against the wall, its blanket eaten through by moths. In the corner, a rat froze, staring at him before disappearing into the shadows. "This is where you sleep," Whitcomb said, his voice flat. "You rise before the sun, you work until I tell you to stop, and you speak only when spoken to. Do you understand?" Samuel nodded, though his throat was too tight to form words. The merchant studied him for a moment, then added with quiet precision, "You are not a boy here. You are mine." When the door shut and the boat slid into place, the darkness pressed in. Samuel pulled the moth-eaten blanket over his shoulders, curled against the cold, and shut his eyes. He told himself not to cry, not here, not where the walls might hear him. Instead, he reached for the only warmth left to him, the memory of his mother's face, the sound of her humming as she pounded cassava by their home. The memory flickered like a candle against the blackness. But in this city, Samuel would soon learn, candles were meant to be snuffed out. Samuel's first morning began before dawn. The cellar door slammed open, and a stocky man with a weather-beaten face stood in the doorway. His eyes were small and mean, his breath sour. On his belt hung a coiled leather whip, the handle worn from years of use. "Up!" the man barked. "Name's Crake. I keep the house running. You don't move fast enough, I use this." He tapped the whip for emphasis. Samuel scrambled to his feet, his stomach twisting with hunger. The day's orders came sharp and fast. Scrub the kitchen floor until it shone. Carry coal buckets up 3 flights for the fireplaces. Fetch water from the street pump. Sweep the entry hall. Every task was met not with thanks, but with more commands. If Samuel hesitated, Crake's hand found his shoulder and squeezed until it hurt, a warning that worse could follow. By noon, his fingers were raw, his shirt clinging damp to his back. The air in the house was heavy with the smell of roasting meat and baking bread. But Samuel's meal was a small bowl of thin porridge, shoved into his hands while he stood in the corner. That evening Harold Whitcomb returned. He was a tall man with sharp features and a voice that carried the weight of authority, even when he spoke softly. At dinner, he called Samuel into the grand dining room, not to serve, but to stand silently in the corner, as the guests feasted. Laughter echoed off the high ceilings, glasses clinked, roasted pheasant, glazed carrots, and steaming potatoes filled the table, the scents wrapping around Samuel like a cruel taunt. "Notice him, will you?" Whitcomb said to a guest, gesturing toward Samuel as if he were an exotic animal. "Picked him up cheap, strong for his size, doesn't speak much, though I doubt he understands half of what we say." Laughter followed. Samuel kept his eyes down, burning inside, but too afraid to meet anyone's gaze. Later, Whitcomb sat at his desk with a large leather-bound ledger. Samuel, summoned again, was made to stand beside him as the merchant flipped through its pages. Each column was filled with numbers, expenses, profits, and a section labeled simply, Assets. Whitcomb ran a finger down the list until he stopped at Samuel's name. Beside it was a number. "This," Whitcomb said, tapping the figure, "is what you're worth. Food, clothes, shelter, all of it comes out of that. The harder you work, the higher your value. The lazier you are." He let the words hang, his eyes flicking toward the whip resting on the desk. "Do you understand?" Samuel nodded. "Good," Whitcomb said, shutting the ledger. "Now get back to the cellar." That night Samuel washed the dirt and soot from his hands in a bucket of cold water. As he bent forward, he caught sight of his own reflection in the ripples. A boy's face thinner than he remembered, eyes too old for his age. He didn't need a ledger to know the truth. In this house, his life could be erased with the stroke of a pen. The cellar was colder at night, the damp air sinking into Samuel's bones. He had learned to curl himself tightly beneath the thin blanket, using his knees to keep his chest warm. Hunger gnawed at him, but exhaustion always won in the end. One night, as he lay half asleep, a faint sound drifted through the darkness, the soft creak of footsteps on the stairs. Samuel sat up, tense. The door didn't open all the way, just enough for a narrow figure to slip inside. A woman, her hair tied in a faded cloth, her skin dark like his, carrying something hidden in her apron. "Eat," she whispered, pulling out a small piece of bread. Quickly. Samuel hesitated, unsure if it was a trick. She nodded once, her eyes steady. He took the bread, chewing slowly to make it last, the stale crumbs tasting better than any feast. Her name was Martha. She was older, perhaps 40, and worked as a laundress for a neighboring household. Her master and Whitcomb traded servants on busy days, so she knew the cellar's back stair. She told Samuel she came when she could, bringing scraps or simply words. In the dim light, Martha spoke of London's shadows, the slave catchers who prowled the streets looking for runaways, the secret deals where human beings were sold in counting houses just blocks away. She warned him that escape was rare, and survival rarer still. Samuel asked her about her family. Her eyes softened, then darkened. They took my children when they were small, sent them to the colonies. I never saw them again. The seller fell quiet. Samuel wanted to ask more, but the heaviness in her voice told him not to. Instead, she told him something he didn't expect. Not all people in London were cruel. There were free men and women of color, abolitionists, even church folk who risked punishment to help the enslaved. But you must be careful, she said. Kindness, when seen by the wrong eyes, will get you beaten. When she left, the cellar felt less empty than before.